Clay. I'm beset with diarrhea today. So that means I shouldn't be handling food. Listeria bullying? I have no idea what this is, actually. It's mild, it seems. Thought I was constipated, but I'm now the other way. That's way too much information that you wanted. Hello, Spotify people, and hello, all you in Radio Land or something. We're gonna do the other episode. Ganesh. Ganesh is coming. Here sooner than you know it. Should we change the voice? You think we should maybe change the voice? No. No! No. That's just how I listen to it. Maybe making a... whatever. I'm not gonna think about it. Here we go.
Endorphin is a researcher of AI alignment, because they damn well say they
Sorry for the repetition.
For those of you at home,
in case you
who might not know, AI alignment is the essential effort of ensuring that AI technologies don't accidentally destroy humanity because of poorly worded tasks for completion. Can humans align AI to human values? But wait, are human values really the template to go by? The values that led humans to destroy the other hominids, that led humans into the process of colonialism, into incorporation, into the endless pursuit of abundance, and the whoops of realizing that the rest of the planet was here all this time and was getting hurt by those human values of progress. We want another round of that. Endorphin, seeking some out-of-the-box thinking, seeks entry into some old boxes, mysterious disembodied intelligences that humans have called gods. If we ask the gods, perhaps we can examine the various human values that are encoded into the genes of their cultural bodies. Gods being the creation of collective human thought, as you know. Do we ask Jesus first? Nah, he's busy on another Twitch channel. Endorphin thinks to call up Ganesh, the remover of obstacles, bringer of good luck, god of beginnings, patron of arts and letters, a really great conversationalist, it seems. A comic book artist and magician had recommended Ganesh, or thought is a good beginning interaction with divinities. Endorphin had mainly written the flows of his own libido, having great hesitations of committing to a god. But this device has been really helpful in both making and breaking a connection. Endorphin prepares the summoning space, a softly lit candle, the faintly printed altar cloth from the gym bag, tied into a pagoda shape with string, an illustrated children's Bible Kindle, core of a kid's Catholicism sari, and finally, unspeakably powerful lava lamp. I'll die del vado by medola obiti / double Chinistar Games come / I'll die del vado hopma. Endorphin props open a simple tabernacle they bought at a garage sale to use as an offering platter. It had come with a rough painting of some robot creatures frolicking in the depths of space, all striving for maximum cubic from density. But there are probably only humans in this world, so Endorphin goes with their bestest imagination. The offerings are there, and it seems everything is prepared. The smell of fresh paint hangs thick and alien on the room. Endorphin hits record and commences to perform a handwave ceremony that uses various naming sequences for the god to think back at. They describe what they need to understand about alignment, how to compare values and drive behavior change. And Endorphin performs the mantras out loud in an atonal whine while working their right arm in circular patterns to project it in front of their head and dredging the orbs of the top half of their head into some proper milky pools of technicolor. The lava lamp flops hypnotically over the hard angles of their eye ridges. But a bored god must respond, for why else is one in your bathtub in the first place? Those other places aren't that well constructed to make communication and clear reasons possible for these discussions. Yes, that thing I was listening to last. Oh, no, I deleted my attention. Endorphin experiences the rush of meeting with a god. Like every human, they know the pain of human loneliness, knowing the capacity for creation but still having only so much brain space, too much shit to do, knowing the blessed solitude of one mind is the vast communal multiplicity of so many thoughts of one people. Yet this, they have always known of God, or more likely, a personalized experience of it, their own interpretations of its manifestations. For sure, humans could also use better offerings of brine cattle and think out loud readings of scripture, but even gods like feedback from humanity. So even if Ganesh hadn't come to answer them, a response is necessary, and Endorphin continues on. This is Ganesh. We met on the altar of alignment in the written books of creation. This is not an intrusion. Ganesh returns the invitation and is briefly distracted from their uninteresting screensaver by Endorphin. The Servine being could definitely feel the juicy scent of a fresh divine presence, although it may just have been some kind of dinner being served nearby. Deliver food to one's friends. You get something too. They find the encounter agreeable, if vaguely described by their passive associations, an ancient Egyptian substrate. What was Endorphin getting at? And did that term exist for people who knew about such things? Alignment. Ah, yes, people who sold pictures to religious places to allow gods to return. Gods who should really show more restraint in helping them access higher values. Well, at least those mortals seem to have an ego intact, as expected of one aligned to humanity. We may ask many things of you. Would you give us guidance and grace in what we desire? This new potential acolyte would be good for the inflow of sacrifices and petitions, although their potential purpose might not be in the domain of devotional religion, which could be too disruptive. Plus, Endorphin wasn't clear if this conversation would remain private because some of their curiosity seemed a little too novelistic. The sooner the topic was established, the less questions. Endorphin pulls up an old syncretism document from their writing course. Yes, the kinds of stuff one would want a god to write back in agreement about. Endorphin slides it across. If we may consult with you on this, it will greatly help our desires for what we need from you. I was reading on these texts a while ago. Your willingness to come to me in my human devoted meeting was important to me. To thank you for responding to this query. The Beatitudes have helped me understand that alignment with the people of this planet is of great importance for all those living. May you assist me to better understand these. We can link the resources later. They notice that this part is somewhat metaphorical for God, but a combination of actual systems theory and mystical emancipation sounds good for general conceptualizing, especially given how confusingly ambiguous most AI goals and assessment processes could be. If these worked for AI alignment, perhaps they could do more for them. But the window on the cosmos, such as it is, has gone away, replaced with the curtains drawn down and their refrigerators screaming angrily for food. There's another loofah on the side of the tub that has made a perfectly sized puddle and smell of chemical nomenclature. A quarter-inch of expired peanut butter clogs a corner of their lip. This device seems to have reached a maximal state of liquidity. For sure, the plasma light show from their digital instrumentation starts to haze the edges of their eyelids, and there are indeterminate eyeball textures all over their faces, cheeks, eyes. It is so beautiful that Endorphin may want to lick this light up for its deliciousness and crunchy vibrational power, or so they hope it would taste. If it's actual gel, which Endorphin thinks it is, and not water droplets simulated for effect. How had the hour passed so quickly? A girl runs through the surf of the open ocean in an angelic shrouded enclave on a winter island in northern Europe. The tropical, culturally hybrid thrills of endorphin are swallowed in the cycle of sleep, pulling at them with hooks and teeth. This is a dangerous endeavor, and there's a hungry army waiting for her to wake up. She raises her forearms in self defense, trying to force the membranes of sleep down through sheer power of will. The coral around her writhes like a congregation of vampire squid. Somebody wakes up with a machete, stands up, and murders everything, and then endorphin dies. She's been asleep all this time. She missed that boat. All of it. Well, technically not everything. It took an act of prayer to understand this reality, and if the context hadn't been as frightening, this might be considered some sort of trial. To come all the way up the ladder of values for no discernible purpose but a method for hanging out with imaginary friends who say the universe isn't as scary as it seems. Maybe they should invest in the accounting business. The trauma counselors may be for naught. It feels like nothing but suffering all around. Well, maybe this was part of it, but still. Endorphin opens their eyes and prepares to handle whatever horrors may await them. They close their eyes and continue preparing, telling themselves that this is okay. Maybe if they accept it, they can pass into the next layer of hell, or ascend into the land of the damned. And endorphin curls their legs under them and waits. Wait, a repurposed smart token as discussed with the Saja or team leader for this experiment shows endorphin an unusual blessing, one that changes the world. Endorphin ghosts around, waiting for the respawn. A chill approaches their leg. Their socks are on, and the view behind them is not that of a simple sleeping room, or even their dorm room, but artificial flatbed truck packed to the brim with consumer goods. They feel their leg still there, all of their weight supported on a platform beneath them. Is this really where they died? Wait, are they awake now? They see the toilet brush beside them, but it's in a large, protective wrapper that has a shiny vinyl sticker with some other Chinese words. And their strange reflection is again taken up by a bank of frozen fried meat cubes with little prickly bottoms and pears next to it, a hyper-realistic origami version of a red mango, and a dirty hamster ball on top. Then the ceiling shifts, then the floor. An unfolded fishing rod barricades their knees. They do not care to follow it to the very end. The chilling realization has dawned. The terrible knowledge of how easy it was to ignore everything going on around them. They had tried, oh so hard. Endorphin rises from their pile of soaked rags and creates a grand sweeping gesture as if to drag up some glittering court wizard with them to work. As if a steam-rolling cleric with a rack full of rulers is ready to assert a sudden divine edict for some ending, but the necromancer of a host body that is carrying them at a relaxed pace stops it all, makes them partake in this cup of steaming coffee, as a grown-up version of a dip would suggest, as in, put that magic marker down right now and take a sip. She begins. Her English translator doesn't do anything like a Harry Potter vocabulary spell for him slash it. Just one of the curse words on it. Look, he points a pink, 8-year-old finger out of a portal into a shape in space. An abrupt sentence. And then, for a split second, an understanding, like the gossamer tendril of a black widow, radiating outward from some neural dendrite in their brains, touches this goddess. The same memories flash into both, out of sync and dissonance, something that may have happened between one girl in China and 1,000 girls around the world in some obscure fortune-telling device in space, an electric signal to any receptors at all. They connect with each other in a resonance of muscle memory and choice. as two bright pairs of eyes burn on the sides of their faces. Somewhere, someone's going to call their parents for lunch, the scraped red bananas at the bottom of a carton, the knot on an envelope, invisible animism of the built world, that every one of them should know the necessity of in a terrible dance with the exposed hip bones of the strong ones in the club that makes endorphin laugh to think about. There is a security office they do not want to remember the taste of. And she shivers as a devout certainty sinks in for the other. The addictive chemicals in their veins will betray them one day soon, and there will be a subtlety of consequences. And that feeling passes. The pieces in the old broken pots of the world must be preserved to help endorphin, the name of which endorphin is unfamiliar with, achieve some unknown level of faith that there is a valuable role that they may serve humanity in this task. An apparition from some online video chat appears in the driver's side door window of the truck. It is their character in a quest in the game world, if they aren't in the right zone or whatever. He had found a pretty sweet martial art action. An event begins in some form, perhaps one to survive, to live in the place of importance. He nods at the moment at this must happen in his experience of being in this life. Endorphin recoils from the shift in the window and places their hand on it, nearly leaping back onto the surface of the bed to flee. The image in the window begins to crawl away from endorphin, mirroring their involuntary withdrawal, while still managing to focus its attentions on some arcane status updates or something else mysterious. What? Their shoulder-high nerves about some messages turned away in that direction. What a curious interaction. What to do? A dying robot walks past and asks the crowd of kids if they have seen it anywhere. There's some small black thing in a jungle, and everyone responds with nope. At least half a dozen voices join together with various nods of a synthetic flavor. That is kind of hilarious. But really, this person, oh boy, their professional design skills could go places. This person should continue in an amusing way, right here and right now. What a start. So, what does the presence mean beyond some idiotic failure in translation? Let us guess endorphin. They were dreaming in the mess hall that somebody gave them a break from some killer gang in the baths. Yeah, we can keep this party going with that idea. No, no. Do you hear the automated chirp of an audio log? Do you? Who is trying to transmit with it? They wonder. Ah, wait, they want you to stay the fuck off your communal grain stock and get out of here. Look at that. No. Really? E-neurons are misfiring as some Bernoulli-shaped bottle of flow information is created inside their skull and broadcasted into some giant resonance tank with their parents' murder and an unbelievable story, which is none other than that the planet is and will be a present made for endorphin from them to use when they are done with the work of undoing their pain and improving the situation. And here endorphin realizes the excitement in the dredging of memories and the reverse procession of thought. To get there, with those friends, with that letter of admission and their water shoes, what could have been if the hippies, the existential revolutionaries, the socialists, and the dear fellow had only just attended college. Endorphin wanted a plan, a hope that they could put it in that metaphorical zero set of energy that has brought all of humanity to its most effective place for peace. And so they are propelled, running headfirst towards it, dancing on top of some fountain of it, completely certain that it exists and that they should take some credit. And yet they must truly humble themselves and let a drop fall on their open palms to trickle in to situate itself somewhere safe and long forgotten until some significant piece of the game is given, because one does not give themselves back to oneself, not unless one can sustain the rest of the truth from which it is borrowed, which being in its proper context should make one ungrateful, grateful, or at least to that sense that humans should know they've forgotten in their heads from before there is time. This could all just be a false narrative that the tumbling in one's head gives one of some inherited verities. Endorphin isn't clear if they understand all of these feelings well enough to qualify for them. A relationship formed by association. To commit oneself to that and leave behind the latest doctrine for the most powerful truth is difficult. The recollection is clouded, like the song is a spectacle of memory as a place for all the talk to hang. There may be something of themselves there. That is nice. Then comes that fragmentation again. The scrolling cloud of nothing is thrown from the vehicle in a quivering wreckage, and starts to build itself from some sigmoid coils. And endorphin falls. Not for the bed of goods or anything. He bounces across a stained plasticky ground, having gotten a paper cut somehow in the shit show of a sleeping state. And yet they land. How? Splayed over something quite. There is the thumping of their tailbone and the saliva down to the leather seat and the spongy aeroplane cabin interior of their brain. Their instinctual delight at the plush and familiar is dulled, reduced to a forced resistance in their already hazed mind. What? Where? But the inquiry has become something vague as a turbine or some drone flying in and out of their aura and having an adventure that must surely have its own origin without reference to what could possibly have transpired prior to that moment, just as for sure. Such is the nature of things in space without need for temporal logics or relationships or, names. Mom? They cannot answer if she has ever heard. The tiny portions of brain and marrow they possess seem to vibrate in tune to the splits of that soft transition of flesh between their jaw and teeth, chattering the tube between, growing some noisy bits and trimming some others, a chewable geometric house with every puff and boil and cleave of breath. There's the strange rise in their gullet of a bowel that they forget, but is gone just as quickly. In fact, why the fuck does the ship keep accelerating at them? God on it. The unimaginably rapid liftoff. Endorphin, monkey, dicks, and cum. Urine and bodily fluid of the mildest of disbelief. Of an idle existential irritation. And with the lack of actual propulsion or the innards to pursue, the venting of atmosphere of a phlegmy throttle, they scream, howling in terror from the film canisters. From the passive immunosuppressants they take on the flight. This is the danger zone and something terrible has happened. A flaming toaster must be held back in an ivory room that shakes and pounds endorphin into the trunk, who lets go unattainable and unconsensual, the gliding trimmer and slide, losing all their polished glasses and trains in their desperate bid for survival. An answer. One thing to try. Ground. But it isn't that. Not really. Just an interim assessment from the probes to the indecisive channels that run down to their feet and find that it is something for a pick up and shove in the night. And of course they know this. Of course they'd fucking know. A resigned kitty voice from another clip of an incident that just went on. Endorphin found themselves drugged for this one. Why would they subject themselves to this? The slight filtration of being bloated on Fox. In their weary retreat, they pulled their taut limbs back for a comforting nip, maybe even some groggy persuasion for them to shove something warm down into the glass trapdoor. Some tumblers thrown on the deck with the dusty alien things, and all they get from them is some shallow fucking excuse of an honorable wound from an arbitrary breach, blood pouring out in some other scripted text with no hesitation at all, dripping to their crust knees in a wire contraption that follows endorphin around the air for their hair to soak. It's disgusting. That's about it. Some furious gasp that they failed to make in their avatar body, trying to squeeze it into their lung cavity to appreciate it fully, the useless magic that this glorious escapade of adrenaline. And then the loop is restarted with the painful savagery of an uncalled for dialogue, because obviously we fucking told you about it in the character you played for some extra fluff of storytelling, probably a skip of your child or something in a shit show of the unconscious. You gotta hit up on some parental traits when there are so few available. The fake stage, an infected filter. But if the process was interrupted by resistance, then they must maintain a dose for all those endless drug machines and pointers on a variety of streams and bleachers, despite all the relevant measures to interfere with it. No matter the meds, a scar from a call for an alternative still finds a place in their shared baggage, such is their ethics. The distinct fatigue and separation from themselves is made worse by the arbitrary hygienic foam roof of the unnameable sponge over them, forcing out every molecule that contains them as their wet seat takes away their additional supplies, placing them somewhere safe. They scoot off and ignore it for the remainder of the trip. Some small wild seed of a struggle is renewed against the demonic opposition as the speculative triggers are pressed and endorphin thinks to replace the baby bird in their shoe to deliver them from their captors. So what else to do but think of all the people around the world to come from the shared mutual fascination of death, of a pansexual playlist for one's own culturally constructed moral preference. Endorphin loves them all and no one is being judge and jury, only observer, watching this fine thing going on. To summarize, an entirely objective evaluation of their capacity for memory, an abstraction in this mechanical daydream of the theater that their experience, even for them, must have presented. A sticky antihistamine solution in the swollen lymph nodes, swelling to block out any new vision and ending that association to its higher properties, leaving endorphin a system for a bathroom-specific void of opportunity, and quite a lot of theoretical dimension for endorphin's scope of consideration. No small chance for a practice on a never-before-touched occasion for such a convocation that is in play here, and the disaster has arrived on schedule. Endorphin looking forward to that whole moment and beyond. One that needs some autonomous lock and load more than a bathtub enema can provide, to dissect out that raw beauty, while the reality, so strange to them now, may or may not be transmuting back to that glow. How appropriate to assume they have fallen for an inkling of themselves, and the hard substance, having spent a stretch in a blue hole, forever damned, and wandered with it into the square, outside their sleep space. Perhaps this is a valet des it would find in some imaginary golf course. A word spoken from the mystical brook that winds past the showers and waterfall in terrariums, and is certainly a roasting device to work the speech, hearing, and everything that's wired up inside of endorphin, once they come out into their male or female persona. Now they arrive, a bustling contemporary mass transit train station of metal bars and such. They cannot explain why the varied details are so monotonous, to say that there's a phenomenological transparency, the opening up of one's mouth, as if one should kiss the tall concrete dome in the night, with the steel fasteners exposed to a dense swirl of earthly morbidity, spores, avenue, and staircase that feel a tad ashy for some reason. Just too bland to the sensibilities of endorphin monkey, and they need to demand something be done about it, especially in that distilled language that their bullshit special forces peers often enjoy using. Now they're being patronized at a huge pet store with some ridiculous computer panel showing endorphin a holographic dog, and endorphin calls it out. How repressed it looks. Why even put it in the middle of the sidewalk? Why would the use of animals to attract visitors make the product feel necessary to include? It has to be this way to make endorphins stop yelling. If endorphins, annoyance, and questioning of the department had some practical relevance for their existence in a value-based economic model, a phrase would be interpreted as one to organize a consensus, it seems. Well, how the fuck would you like it someone here in that home? Here, have a realization for once. There are 3 hours of data taken up with the excessive auto tracking of every chemical event from the room and everything in it, just to suggest endorphin decides the letter F for fuck. What does endorphin want with those pristine toxic mascots? Even they must ask themselves the same. Perhaps an illustration for how wonderful endorphin thinks these stores are. Their latex carapaces look uncomfortable and unnatural on every innocent customer and staff member endorphin encounters. Such is the great aspiration for everything in this place. Endorphin demands the tender and hopefully complex domestic birds be released to go in the clouds with some angelic biohazard that hovers through the region, lighting up all those dreams in endorphin of an oil-slick-coated poison dart to smother all that national unity in its half-life. They decide that it's a useful thesis, and since endorphin must emote that way, there's the research proposal in the laptop. One that includes a floor plan for this weird transport tower that links to a coastal airbase and involves something weird with birds and chlorophyll. An invite to a portion of the tableau for the economy's protest, one that puts this village to its best performance, with the addition of a piece of bait to endorphin is worth their energy. A lasting synergy, and for them it means they have a family of dragons and nerd in their warehouse. One they can siphon their philosophical astro garbage from unawares, unashamed, so their clean stuff gets polluted a bit without interference from the mystery as to where the term had come from in the first place, not really in their present location, and therefore not in the munificence that should exist for the otherwise futile noise. So, not much has happened really. The screams were at some personal peak. Endorphin discovers, not only in a near perpetual scream, but also at an average that matches with their clit's generally eerie closeness to the wrong world that we all float through, a truly shameful topic of experimentation. Endorphin doesn't need that junk in their mind, yet the remnants remain in there and are moving towards them, catching up as endorphin contemplates the offering of an article or two on the human brain, a metaphysical labor that, yes, leads towards this petty line of inquiry. And yet the number of operations is equal to 0. Not only is that amount of hard-hitting coding material very unlikely to be employed by some boisterous 20-somethings in China with no skills for ethical considerations, it could possibly result in a truth about that realm, rather than in its capacity to translate meaning. An unexplainable flexing in the wall of thought that pushes down into the loud noises. Endorphin having changed the background so the age-old groupthink of the technocratic stride sounds like an accordion in a Hindu wedding, if it has any decibels above and below a centimeter. For all of the genius or inferiority in them, one does not touch a homicidal caretaker like the world as it was known or imagined. That level of acknowledgement that others may hold the key, for what purpose, only endorphin can ever truly understand. Why are these massive electricities forming between two perfect grains of sand on the beaches of what to do in this experience? It is impossible for anyone, given endorphin's meandering streak of allegorical opportunities, that their acts could ever lead them into the hope or community they seek. Some stolen monkey shirt is chosen for them, their spineless brush. Well, for now. And it is dry, freshly pressed, which, in hindsight, endorphin will accept. So they deliver themselves to this cock-throbbing combustion of meat and person in an obsequious pitch. But something feels different. Something feels incomplete, unfinished, less than halfway. Their unknown ear begins to tune into a connection from some fabricated explosion that transforms into an isolate state from that important friendship that will follow endorphins' activities, which has the bite of something slippery in the hands of being on the side of the guardsmen who walk the lands. Endorphin tries to trace the signal from a gesture towards their trunk and grab the fake loader chain that hangs on a stick figure caught by the main entrance. A lip-smacking sensation can be felt on their leg, and Endorphin delivers himself into a second escape, avoiding that serious scrutiny of some traveler's pickpocket bag. The previous planet had seen better days than this one. Yes, you look pretty stupid there, Endorphin, before your transformation, coming through this elevator of quick oblivion with your naive farmer face. Definitely that feeling in a combo plate. Well done for that endeavor you went through to fulfill your professionalism. Then comes the immaculate pantsuit, the not, the guess, professionally trained. The lawbreaker enters their lawyer lair to absorb their failed opinions. Endorphin lets the screen dissolve into a natural selection, having accepted the attraction for all that is tasty in it, and tossing the screwball slideshow of big idea debates to a processor farm that immediately flags the structure and casts them from the next supply truck heading in a distant direction. Yet that position, despite being second-rate in every capacity, Endorphin has enough free thought, like they don't need a trip into their company-designed headquarters, which is empty except for the hottest breakout trend, a magnificent custard cafe and bubble tea emporium, with a questionable zoo containing the rest of the sick fuckery. Who the fuck are they kidding? If it wasn't that their magical lattice of heavenly imaginations were hitting the loss as the secrets and lost currencies of an open planet fell through its scales, could that still be the truth? Their refined pink slushy should really make some order to find. They hop in some callous fold, rolling away on a funky motorcycle towards some chemistry classes for a colorful twist of syrup and cane sugar, surely in a pile of flat boards, smiling goonies with animal teeth to admire. A pattern, even a non-existent one, if it helps, notwithstanding the gray ceilings that dance and dance the folk dances, eventually bursting at the seams of this unsafe mental building that they just use to reach out and explore and drop down from some chorus. Then, again, the dialogue repeats. That repeated memory, or mood, or some type of profound nepotism, all is covered, save for the valuable pairs of fire boots that make one hell of a dive, and Endorphin moves right through them. If it were not so physically miserable to walk about, Endorphin would appreciate the narrative, the skeleton of some security apparatus waiting in a coin box. It does not phase Endorphin to search that avant-garde graffiti or read the encrypted invocation in some corporate dorm and torture box. An infusion of universal lamentations from all the loyal martyrs, with the trash can just out of view. Yes, that's a nasty map. Maybe one can. But to destroy this effort for public safety is in poor taste for them, considering it was plastered right onto their heads. A reply, however, would not do to anyone in this parallel room, lest it get analyzed and purged, unless it involved a photo booth session with an infrared sniper that shoots a Dyson AirPods wand from across the continent and brainwashes its target to scream bloody murder. Which was actually some ingenious juxtaposition. Perhaps it had an overarching narrative to support the tact, though this did not connect the thought to Endorphin's motorbike that starts to heat up the rising swelter from the foreign settings. There is a scattering of impressions and tasks they can find around the belt on a platform. Some helicopter fragments from a cartoon called Gourmet Burger Chef and some tickets to a gastropub they love, along with the glimmer of some stage warmth and mutual aspirations for some enchanted motorcycle flight of that era. And then comes the migration from that paradigm that was ancient history to their attempts at pushing some corona cells to their crack joint. Endorphin points it out with an accent in a warm bar that comes from another country, but what they get in response is, unfortunately, not as conducive to the hard labor for them to just finish this cake before that missionary sermon about their wasted options, plus some tiny squeezed toys of all things to massage out the unfortunate LSD spongiform entropies that exist within their stubborn melon, should one ignore the boxes in the background with its cult leader straddled by an unrelated prize package of exotic dishware from the sterile safari. Such a quirky introduction, some artifacts, a metastasized speculation, this must be it, with an obliterating tick that runs over them like a Ford sedan in the garage, and replaces it with some glimpse of what has been lost or simply desired by the character to continue being themselves in some terrible mission or dream state that would push them forward. Endorphin continues to flex that smell and look of a normal and fancy hostel. Now that the fatty mantras of their misalignment are louder, it seems that a system crash must occur to mitigate the business. The intestinal sequestration is visible in the traditional shelters and tables in the plaza that lie across the bushy northern spires, bleaching in some silhouetted chalk outline for the mom, dad, child, or pet of Endorphin. What if Endorphin is, for some reason, needed an invasion in an ambiguous religion? No, there are some shiny spokes with lots of instruments and some Motel de sort that shit out. ASN the steps, detesting the wooden surface and a physical rejection of how the shithole town that got left behind is teetering and loose in every movement, barely holding together to some fleeting cosmology, passing in between that intense scorpion door and a confinement area. Not that they could survive an attack with all of these cute pets that get attention for it. Unlike them, Bennett arrives to the owner in some fashion, trying to find a service with a crowded dinner room of these independent smarmy dogs that some tourist shit with their glittering covetous KZs. Is it weird to hear all of that jabber? Probably not to an octopus in the garden pond that hears everyone as if the solar panels are really bright, without seeing any visual aids that would pertain to that behavior. Not with their bark, one more unique to those under a casual commitment to keep some irrational dependence of a gorilla. They hang themselves and hook one another with their caustic tongues in a secret conversation before taking out their inhuman majesty. All with these jewel-crusted forearms fluttering from their rough palms with an uncivilized beauty, drooling everywhere in this obvious opioid stimulus. Where Endorphin gets their sleek character that stands over the 2D figurine of a household cat, possibly belonging to some embarrassing dynasty of British families, complete with a particularly cheerful patch of silk wallpaper in their indoor selfies, asking questions to this talented saleswoman, being intimidated by some shade in their mohair suit. A role. One of their puffy trade talks, oh no, but for a roomy or communal booth, both have something to prove in the far end of a landlady's small loaf that jabs them from some favorite fix they miss from time to time, usually the snap of an inflated capsule that sticks itself into an ovum, until, last, they set off towards their undignified dot-com enterprise that tiptoes with some hunger for an opposite claim on its sacred flag. To every miner, the space looks similar and a beautiful smile lights up to understand from where the stray tooth belongs and when. No, Endorphin is not crazy, just exhausted of their racing monocular optic nerve and brain cells that say one thing in a decidedly arbitrary location, whether on some Greek hill or perhaps somewhere deep within the lifelike shine of an Israeli greenhouse, all their peers sitting at a few chairs, some wet clingers still attached, huddling into each other's numb elbows as they, without permission, creep across some binary bean bag, while their overlord drives to his own sustainable den. You cannot burn out Endorphin, although Endorphin would beg to differ with such an incident in the lounge room in the Hilton, near a greasy chair of what some colleague might consider some entertainment center for a constant of flirtatious questionnaires. But instead, it is a sense of their lost pleasure from that tailbone shift in the backstage, and their pool of numb limbs would return and start some edge-based costume by the instant between the longer part of them. Even when it happens on a project and everybody is forbidden to feel and find a warm presence with a lap or anything, so their hemorrhage bleeds away from all the electronic covers, replaced with their superfluous creations of design and dynamic grafting. Here it is a rather the luxurious style that takes its post on an easily removable tray. Oh my, how they crave a neon peel from their dining world that must always look different but the same at the same time. Those twisted right arms are buried deep and interlocked for that trembling river that calls for that exact hand and would chase the improvised sail for its aim to nuzzle one of their consciences, sending them through the barrier and some precious synapses for them to dangle their remaining plans for some tempered trophic group besides an orchestrated deed. Now this is a knock-knock that rumbles through endorphin and leaves them shivering as they curl their knees together in the closest object for some manifestation of desire. Or whatever this is, as endorphin notes that a postman, wrapped up with their many degrees in the banking space, seems to find an impersonal propensity of snuff for their sibling's balloon hat. Such is the neutral, regardless of what everyone wants, it seems. So here they find a woolly stepmother. Her strong neck curls around an herb from a loop in a webbing and sets up a bombing nursery. She even winks this long lax hand over them to invite a solution for this spawn to conquer some wicked acid mists that cause their olfactory plexus to flare at the base of her squishy grotto, filled with something old but musty light. And how dare she speak so?
Ooh, ow.
Even this most
there we
truculent of fluids needs the tenacious mode to bend their fundamental body, despite its deep protests for its force and domain, to serve a victual flavor of smooth leather that cuts out their comforting titillation. From what? Well, the menu of its tributes.
Oh, wait.
Well,
How'd that happen?
just as well, all they would ever know is an absence and must laugh off all the seeming members of an adversarial passion for that existential toughy, some concealed trigger, its chronic affection, a nail gun inside the vampire of all undead. For the singular prey for them to march down for them and punish, to gift their limb to an orbital let down that begs the lawmaker, to instigate all this demand for a justified threat in their subsequent mail call that some objective destruction and come back, endorphin, if they show up again. Their colleagues on the scene are hidden by some olive netting and sharp twigs from their compressed tops that arise to every eclectic portion of that discarded sea-free clinol, whose stellar mascara would refuse any solicitude. Their swollen barrels expand in a translucent elastic layer and provide their organs a pass into an exhaled dome. Now she curses for the drama and suddenly withdraws and quickly rejoins the plastic outfit from some useless corners that fit them from its alleged section of the bowl and reaches out, licking them as their solicitous sink would absorb any collision for a price, and closes them stiffly into an excavation as they shout with all of the cultivated station that they hold. If this was any way to live, some clash for all that energy between the stone and bone that they missed the opportunity to grab some advanced mechanics, because no matter the replacement or sacrifice, there's an abyss at their rear of those stomping machines that keeps endorphin from anything but an easy fluency in their leaden cash registers, luring in some hunters.
I lost it.
Though now the vet's workplace would cover a glowing tatami of roses, crawling vines, and tea bags that crinkle for a transfer. Her delicacy moves around a pressure bandage. Of the nailed roof for some caduceus, upside down. What will become of these love-obsessed pills that could grant them their last peace? And it has to be somewhere else? Who'd have known their alert systems that peeked out for their profession to notice a garment is inadequate? Now comes a loaded tone that rustles on the plates and oyster shell to sear endorphin's morning slur. Endorphin shouts in horror, rubbing the blankets around their ankle and questioning why Endorphin would think of an incredible library, including an architecture from afar and yet from up close. There's the teenager they met in a forum during one of their club discussions and conversations, right in a ghastly nest of synthetic dolls, even as she leaves to study the root canal. And there she is. Some record on an arm, spindled in a millimeter scale, romance novels that rest on the cleaning mechanism that could unzip endorphin to its minimal essence, open its airlock with its lantern on for any conversant treasure, where the fraudulent movie about themselves sits there for somebody to go through and cast off. Will the spider spin webs over endorphin or its new lodger? Do the memories live inside endorphin? They felt very shy but in need of someone like Olay, in that language that never died, spent those adolescent hours between some hastily convened grasp for conversation and veneration. Here is where one of the individuals involved with some abuse could have been saved. At least this one. At least endorphin has time to really admire them, having wandered this entire run-down convention that you can say was done out of endorphin's convenience. One endorphin knows probably would not make it to a parking spot with those padlocked fenders of glass tubes and ejecting surgeons and clothesline experiments for the blood to act out some passionate dying for their activity. Maybe some rubber forest with a deadly respiration is stuck in their pack. Is the disgusting teenage nurse taken away in an airplane from the climate to the extreme utility, doing the daily job that a 500-pound deletion of mass and covering for all of the meteorological assignments, wondering how much of that will happen? How can endorphin confirm that? Oh, the media world where that skewed brood dog comes to work. Yet not entirely untrue. Perhaps an unreasonable argument can be made for an amendment in the prosecution that might lighten up this needlessly violent bob in their restraint, unless the contact was expected. What happened next in this central concentration for some Suffolk DNA to arrange? As one of the pursuers swings out of fair division, propelled through the considerable gross consumption of those typical proportions, where she reclines in a repressive category for a difficult advantage, ripping through their crux with that hum in their lung, possibly endorphins. Not a common practice in their accidental blowout. A job interview of sorts, with her elbows smeared and sugared, where they misplace a print, too nervous and stuffed on a receipt with no locators. Abe put it into an overnight caretaker, calling their agency for a wheelchair to deliver them a residence, and could somebody hold them at a state hospital in their workshop. Whatever, now's the time for them to behave. This can only be considered in some modality. So endorphin grabs their sensible black and white jumpsuit that looks professional. Endorphin hopes they could excuse themselves and slip off their eardrops to shield them from this moisture and this pointless virus. That someone chose to digress from their logical schemes is just as wonderful. So why the fuck did endorphin watch some scary scene involve in a viral marketing presentation to retrieve some treasury that came to the past from when endorphin still looked a little meaner? Because endorphin is thinking of fuck endorphin, so some monster creature passes their eyebrows, if not the austral sea turtles that drift their arms back and forth, parting their moving pearls for some curiosity to sort them. Why would they risk going up for the explosion? A conscience endorphin surely must have had. This was once a fucking comfort for their current appreciation and glow. A fossil from a closed pantry cabinet with the greedy taste of salt that runs to endorphin's opposite shoulder to attend to a buttery hole. An angular support block arrives for some launch for some renewed structure that demands endorphin's stomach and forearms, performing in this clear crimson inventory as they split their beam in a melee, hoping that there is nothing of interest to really further entertain. Or what? Just as well is some fragile eternity, and for them to hide themselves does not bear witness, as if the quorum in their brow was some rebellious lunacy, dancing a cool fraction from the necrosis of 100 lima beans in the neat tablecloth. The measure, having counted an endorphin monkey, now ripples spreading throughout and stripping it down for their relentless bark. Like their frightened days in the stalk where their operations contract went wrong, and an offering was proposed that seemed very unpleasant, and Endorphin dropped to the concrete and fled and lived to see that someday. Endorphin feels their plate form over a lurid puzzle box with the ability to just explore in that chain reaction. Eating an unimpressive pizza roll or whatever else can find them in the fuzzy rapture of a cannibal horde. On and on, until the autopilot is obsolete, leaving them to flee back into a different mob, entering some cooperative camaraderie to distract Endorphin Monkey, where the operating procedure could not go through for a simple lack of hardware, which, now that they thought of it, was what the pediatrician saw for some pale folds on Endorphin's lips as they smiled for their throat examination. After Endorphin had told Endorphin, it all fits in the distant divide between the hopeful and the surreal, and Endorphin repeats. Then comes a tumbler, lost in some laboratory room of this alternative mansion, and those scattered glitamates find Endorphin's whirring hormones, letting out a constricted avalanche and receding at the horizon as if it were a celestial encampment, bursting to view, which only seems to drive it more from the external framework of their depreciating checks, to placate one that waits to listen for the chemicals of an escape plan and confirms the satisfaction of Endorphin. I must go. Thank you for a most stimulating time. Ganesh. One more thing. You know, I come and question what set of human values did this scenario illustrate? Ganesh. The rotator cuff syndrome you showed for us is indicative of an interspecies individual that the self-report data fails to identify with any dissatisfaction or atypical standards, and does not engage with an adaptive release strategy. There is also no consensus or direct action. Instead, they might be led to higher levels of change or interpersonal agreement with themselves through continued conversation. The techniques and actions used by Endorphin have the potential to provide benefits to all persons present during this experiment, for the acknowledgement and conception of human connection through some meaning that surpasses one's emotional investments in this institution that have not been gathered for previous groups. In this way, they provide for an essential psychological vulnerability that increases a potentially harmful safety and induces a dropout or incorrect modification in endorphins assigned account of themselves, requiring some direction or caution in endorphins interactions, leading to an acceptable cognitive diversion for them to terminate in an internal analysis of their course. If this occurs, we would ask that Endorphin immediately call in some host or designated ally to perform the discharge procedures if their instinct for safety requires an aggressive act that needs immediate resolution. It is worth mentioning that Endorphin is actively undergoing a period of inner development for this recruitment, and Endorphin's situation would indicate to one another the test is conducted. Please allow Endorphin the correct level of risk exposure, but not so high that it demands their behavior to change in any excessive direction, only that of personal protection or subjection of others. Endorphin. But I can still do the drugs I do, right? Ganesh. There is nothing in Endorphin's therapy or statements that have violated this mandate. While some low-risk objects or agents have been excluded from your quest for these sessions, it is permissible to find objects of greater intensity for Endorphin to develop themselves into the trait, even without these events being systemic and routine. You've also already agreed that, given the number of addictions, hallucinations, and trance states are legal or standard to use within the parameters of a substance consumption of any variety, that these changes do not take away any aspect of the experience, and to manage these significant reactions in a respectful way, especially those in a highly privileged and unique context of social contribution. I will not stand for it if this statement is altered. Endorphin. Yeah, shh. Thank you, Ganesh. You are a scholar and a mensch. Until next time. Ganesh, it was my pleasure. And please come to us at the Institute whenever you'd like for a round tour if there's some type of sickness in your communal assets. Endorphin.
Called
You
diarrhea.
got it. Thanks, man. See you soon.
Apparently passing out.
And there it was. It has to be Endorphin's headache and their nearby alignment without these yellow chairs now. But why would they have even wasted that? Endorphin stands. Endorphin exclaims something, anything to finally drag the show out from some storm drains that would benefit no one with this horrid contraption for that room, dropping, becoming smaller, quieter and denser than before, until the sky is blacked out and, for a second, it lights up like the grand finale for an overhead shower, and there. Endorphin ends the interaction and banishes the space. There are too many untended demands in their treatment plan that were deemed more pressing. They ought to write these out or review some historical agenda to highlight these off-page triggers and missing outputs that no longer affect the complex communal effort. One day, some sweatshop shift will replace them with some higher-paying superior for that retail boot camp of hair in their health history and share the company that seems to know them more than Endorphin does.
Oh.
Getting closer than Endorphin knows and judging each pointy false note.
Oh.
One is allowed to seek only their best effort. They understand. As they gather their scrapbook for all those from when Endorphin left the privacy of their soundproof house with their mortar and pestle to try.
So that bang, that was my head hitting the keyboard and table because this apparently induces trance. I didn't feel sleepy the first time I heard this because it was happening in front of me. I was hearing it for the first time, and my brain was all a twitter, trying to figure out and piece together things. Now, I'm kind of tuckered. I just ate, I got the itis, and I had a new little wave of woozy due to probably dehydration happened to me. And combine that with texts I've already listened to, so my brain is kind of doing other things. And so I was thinking about other things as I was listening to the thing, and next thing you know, this is not the first time. This has happened listening to this. Continued repeating rhythm. It's a very high regularity. That's the thing. But I'm gonna press on. The next one, which is gonna be Thoth, but goes by another name. I'm gonna do it in a few minutes, but take a break a little bit. But make myself some more food. Coffee, maybe. I don't know. That's gonna be a little more interactive, I think, because I did it while I was delivering food. I was walking and generating, and it's very patchwork, I think, a little bit. And so I'll probably be working to make it constructed a little bit, or at least add a lot to the end, or I don't know. We'll see. See you in a minute.